Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. It's our custom to go around and say our names. My name is Cass.
Grisha.
My name is Michael.
Mark.
Sorry.
Jeff.
My name is Jerry.
I'm Clint.
I'm Larry.
I'm Ed.
My name is Matthew.
My name is Stephen.
My name is Tony.
I'm Jack.
I'm Tim.
My name is Greg.
I'm Christopher.
Bill. I'm Brian.
I'm Susan.
Michael.
I'm Brad.
Peter.
We're delighted today to have our very own Samuel Schindler as our Dharma speaker on the subject of the Enneagram, a map of human consciousness, offering a gateway to deeper intimacy with ourselves and the people in our lives. Samuel is certified in the Enneagram studies in the narrative tradition, ESNT, founded by Helen Palmer and David Daniels. His Enneagram studies include the Deep Coaching Institute and Deep Living Institute under Roxanne Howe Murphy, Riso Hudson Enneagram Institute coursework, and study with Sandra Maitri. Samuel has over 30 years professional experience in teaching, training, conflict resolution, and employee coaching. He is a longtime student of the Diamond Approach Path, and his work now includes personal development, life coaching. For more information, visit www.samuelschindler.com. Welcome to Samuel.
Thank you. So first of all, how many people are familiar with the Enneagram? Enough to know your type. Okay. All right, thanks. And as you know, or just noticed that the Enneagram is more of a Western teaching. It's really about the approach is to that our realization comes through looking at the body in particular. And, so I'll just start off with a little segment from H. Almas, the founder of the Diamond Approach. This is under the heading of the intimacy of being ourselves. Being ourselves is a delight. It is an intimacy. It is a genuineness, a preciousness. It is indescribable how satisfying it feels to us. Being ourselves implies an openness, a kind of gentleness. When we are being ourselves, we feel intimate, we feel close to ourselves. Our heart is open, our mind is clear. We are settled. There is no sense of thickness or inner agitation or fighting within ourselves. We experience an inner unity that feels peaceful, relaxed, contented. And whether we are feeling one specific quality or aspect of our being, or we are feeling true nature in its transcendence or boundlessness, we enjoy a delightful freedom and satisfaction. You've probably had moments like that. I have. The difficulty is it's very hard to stay there. And what takes me away, or one of the major things, forces, I guess, that driving forces that takes me away is my own passion, what's called the passion, or the emotional habit. In my case, I identify with the structure of type 6, so I experience a lot of kind of free-floating, a lot of worry and anxiety and kind of concern about safety and security, depending on the context that I'm in, but that definitely takes me away from my heart and it causes me a good amount of suffering. And what I've more clearly realized in recent months is how the passion really is in sort of, I've known about these terms for ages, but I haven't really worked with them with a sense of the felt experience of it and realizing how much my passion takes me away from my heart and causes me suffering, and that by coming back to my heart, I can begin that it's a way of really supporting my ongoing work and transformation. So what I want to touch on is that Enneagram is a very detailed, involved system, and but what I want to try to focus in on is by looking at brief descriptions of the type and the passion, how that works for each type, and then after we go through that, then to look at the virtue. So we're looking at both the emotional habit and the virtue. So the passion is like it has it's an element of it's kind of characterized by scarcity. We're trying to, there's some sense of deficiency that's driving it. In contrast, out of inner work, we can't just make it happen, but out of kind of keeping it as a guide and working with ourselves, there can be an alchemy that supports the rising of the virtue, which has a quality of plenitude and spaciousness. And there's a particular, while we relate to all the virtues, there's a particular virtue by our type that is an alleviation of the suffering that we experience. So just stepping back for a moment, for those of you who don't know, the Enneagram is a dynamic system of 9 personality types that combine traditional spiritual wisdom, modern psychology, and recent findings in neuroscience. And it's based around 3 centers of intelligence: the head, the heart, and the belly. And those centers describe how there are 9 distinct fundamental ways of experiencing reality, of thinking, behaving, and acting. And while we have all types within us, there's one type that is particularly dominant. So so it's like the portal. It's the portal that our own type is the portal to the infrastructure of how our personality is organized. So I have a handout that to go to guide us here. Help me. Thanks. So looking at the first page here, focus of attention, the basic principle is that our personality or ego structure develops in early childhood, and it develops based upon 9 different perceptions of reality. They're impressions on our consciousness. And these fundamental beliefs determine how we focus our attention and are the basis around which our type is organized. So the 9 basic character structures are views of reality. How we see ourselves, what we're like, what we believe reality is like. And each type has a corresponding feeling tone that is the result of our emotion, the result of our emotional habit that corresponds to our point of view or our point of attention. And that's called the passion or the emotional habit, as I just said. So, looking at, well, just briefly, at the top of the Enneagram, we have 8 the challenger, 9 the peacemaker, and 1 the reformer. These are the body-based types and they're seeking autonomy, and they all have the primary emotion of anger, though they don't all look like they're angry. Like the 9 doesn't appear to be angry. So one type, 8, easily expresses the anger. It comes out, or this is a very powerful energy. And then type 9, type 9 denies the anger. So the anger becomes a block to actually knowing themselves, because they're trying to avoid discomfort, conflict. There's a whole structure, orientation around that, which we'll look the next page here briefly at the brief type description. And type 1 represses the anger. So the body-based types are, if I didn't say this already, they kind of have a stance against reality. They're seeking autonomy, we all have anger, but this is a particular. But for the body-based types, the anger keeps the type structure in place. And then we have 2, 3, and 4, which are the heart-based types. They're very oriented towards connection and attention, and relationship is key for them. And the key, and of course, these are important issues for all of us, but they are especially important for this group. And the emotion that characterizes this group is grief and distress. Sometimes they say it's shame, and they're attempting to avoid this. And then at the bottom we have, or at the left-hand corner here, we have 5, 6, and 7, which are the head-based types, and they are fear-based, and the issue is seeking security. And going back for a moment to the heart-based types, 3s deny their feelings. They can be very out of touch with their own feelings. 2s repress them, and 4s very much express them. And with the head-based types, 6s, the 6 expresses the fear. It's right here, very up for us. 5s repress it, and 7s deny it. So frequently, a lot of times, you don't see the fear in 7s. A lot of their activity is about trying to manage the fear. So let's take the next step then is to take a look at the brief statements of the 9 types. And I'll go by the 3 centers. So starting with 8, 9, and 1. So 8, the challenger. So you can, I'll make this in mind. 8, the other thing I wanted to notice is there are different names for the type on this page than on the front page, and that's due to this information coming from different schools. The types on the first page are from the Enneagram Institute, which was originally founded by Russ Hudson and Don Riso, and the statements here are the Enneagram and the narrative tradition, which was founded by Helen Palmer and David Daniels. So the protector or the challenger, the belief, so we all have this, so this belief that we develop from childhood then is playing out in how our attention is focused and what activities we take on. So type 8 believes you must be strong and powerful to assure protection and regard in a tough world. Consequently, protectors are justice-seeking, direct, strong, action-oriented, but also overly impactful, excessive, and sometimes impulsive. So, and you can see from here that there's this belief that we must do something, which is an indication that we've already lost this contact with our original spiritual nature. And so there's a sense of we've got to do something to survive or to seek love or be accepted. and how that drives us. And so the high qualities are manifested in many of the activities that the type engages in. It can be strong and powerful. In that strength and power, there can be a great life force, energy that is delightful and fun and positive enthusiasm. On the downside, so an example of that we're all kind of dealing with in the world is Trump is an example of a very low level, low functioning, spiritually, psychologically stunted 8. So that's why what you hear. What does that say?
So what are the downsides?
So so you can hear in his language. I mean, it's this important. He's always talking about strength. He's always talking about fairness. And, though he has a completely distorted view, and it's always about getting back. Vengefulness, which is part of the quality. So there's you can see it here on the next page over, the habits of emotion under 8. So there's this, it evolves at the most pronounced level. The habit is angry, revengeful, cynical, or uncaring. All right, the next one is we go on to 9, the peacemaker. Believes that to be loved and valued, you must blend in and go along. Consequently, mediators are self-forgetting, harmony-seeking, comfortable, but also conflict-avoidant and sometimes stubborn. And you can see over here on the next page over, the habits of emotion. Again, it's the stubborn, unwilling, self-neglectful, passive-aggressive. But that stubbornness is part of that effort, part of that orientation to not be controlled, to have autonomy. And also can be as a result of being out of touch with the life force energy of their anger, which can be helpful in kind of actually saying what's true to them, because there's this aspect of not paying attention to themselves. This is the big deal. It's not really paying attention. Being the original words were sloth and right action. So it's not paying, it's a self-forgetfulness of what's key about dealing with your own needs. So when you wake up and are aligned with yourself, then there's a movement into right action. For type 1, it's perfectionism, or the reformer, believes you must be good and right to be worthy. Consequently, perfectionists are conscientious, responsible, improvement-oriented, very self-controlled. That's going to come to repression of their energy. They can also be critical, resentful, and self-judging. And over here we see a little bit more of the repetition of that on the right side. Resentful, irritated, righteously angry, self-punitive. So the passion is anger or resentment. And then the virtue is serenity. And we'll look later, a little bit later, about how the virtue manifests in qualities of the awakened heart. Going on then to the heart-based types, we have the giver or the helper. So notice how this is all about beliefs about what we must do. Believes you must give fully to others to be loved. Consequently, givers are caring, helpful, supportive, relationship-oriented, but also can be prideful, overly intrusive, and demanding. So they're very oriented towards getting their needs met by focusing on the needs of other people. The blind spot is their own needs. But they're very kind of have a lot of times can have a very have a very affectionate, caring energy. My mother was it too. And then there is type, and did I say the passion over? The passion on the right side here is prideful. So there can kind of be this inflation about my importance, or on the other hand, the deflation. I wasn't seen or wasn't appreciated, and so because we're operating out of our ego space, I kind of, I can go into this very kind of depressed space. And there's a sense that I need to earn approval. So one of the aspects of the heart-based types is a very image-oriented working on. It's how wanting to be seen. Of course, we can all have some issue around that, but this is particularly strong for the heart-based types. And then type 3, it's called the achiever or the performer. Believes you must accomplish and succeed to be loved. Consequently, performers are industrious, fast-paced, goal-focused, and efficiency-oriented. But they can also be insensitive to feelings, impatient, and image-driven. The type 3 is the overlay for the United States, for our culture here. So that's why there's so much emphasis on doing and performing, and not much given to the importance of feeling, being connected with oneself. So 3s have all their emotional energy goes out to perceive what needs to be done to be seen as successful, but they can be very disconnected from themselves. And of course, this is ultimately a source of suffering, because there's a sense that they don't know who they are really, outside of their accomplishments. So the passion or habit of motion is called deceit, because I'm deceived by, I believe that I am my image, and I want you to believe that I'm my image. Without my image, this is not operating in a conscious way. And the virtue then is to actually wake up to that and be committed to truthfulness. And then there's type 4, the individualist, the romantic. Believes you must attain the longed-for ideal relationship to be loved. Consequently, romantics are idealistic, deeply feeling, empathetic, authentic, to self, but also dramatic, moody, and sometimes self-absorbed. So it's very oriented towards kind of dwelling with feelings and being concerned about my authenticity, and a lot of energy goes into that. The passions is envy. I have a sense of I'm not connected, so I'm not necessarily, envy does not mean that I want what you have or what somebody else has, but it's like, why can't I have what that person is arrived at? There's some sense of, all of these have some sense of deficiency, and some of them we're more aware of that directly than others, because of kind of the pain or the drama that they cause us. And the virtue is equanimity. And then moving over to the head types, we have type 5, the observer, the investigator, believes you must protect yourself from a world that demands too much and gives too little to assure life. Consequently, observers are self-sufficient, seeking, non-demanding, are self-sufficiency seeking, non-demanding, analytical, thoughtful, unobtrusive. They can also be withholding, detached, and overly private. So this is it's a very sensitive type, but it's can be easily overwhelmed. So there's this kind of pulling back as a strategy to be safe, and a very much a focus on ideas. A lot of 5s have tremendous expertise, but they also then kind of the big issue is kind of detachment, withholding themselves. So you can see here on the right side, the page on the right side, there's a holding back and holding on. Fear of intrusion, fear of depletion. The passion is called avarice because it's not greedy. It's like this holding on to the few essential things that assure an independent existence, so you don't have to depend upon others. And so then the virtue is letting go of that to non-attachment. For sixes, we have the loyalist or the loyal skeptic believes you must gain protection and security in a hazardous world you just can't trust. Consequently, loyal skeptics are themselves trustworthy, impulsive, good friends, and questioning, but can also be overly doubtful, accusatory, and fearful, getting paralyzed by fear. Sixes are one of the big issues for sixes. Their idealization often is unloyal and responsible. They're good team players, but caught up in doubt. So fear and worry or counter fear with aggression. The passion, emotional habit is fear or anxiety, and the virtue is courage. Courage of the heart, to be able to show up and go forward. And then we have 7, which is the enthusiast, or the epicure, believes that you must keep life up and open to assure a good life. Consequently, epicures are optimistic, upbeat, and possibility and pleasure seeking. And adventurous, but also can be pain avoidant, uncommitted, and self-serving. Over here, fear of what? Craving more, fear of limitation, fear of deprivation. So there's kind of drive for next. So virtue, so that's called the gluttony. It's kind of gluttony for experience, for adventure. And that's a way of managing the fear by keeping all of these options in the going on, and you don't get caught up in the fear, limited by the fear. And the virtue is sobriety, so it's about actually sobriety meaning staying with one thing and actually finding that by going deep, you may find the satisfaction that you're seeking through all of these plans and options.
Question?
Yeah.
So is the virtue, when you talk about virtues, is it kind of an overcoming of the excessive nature of that type?
Yeah, it becomes, so it's kind of what comes out of, so the passion is a suffering that we feel that is said to be based in our disconnection from our true nature, or from the sense of spirit. And then the virtue arises. So actually, the virtue, when we actually then kind of wake up to the passion and begin to work with it, say, I guess one of the ways it works for me is I realize, I'm experiencing all of this suffering out of my anxiety, my worry, and so it's not about getting rid of that, because also these emotions, are also based in our kind of our involvement, they have a survival element, and actually we developed each of these strategies to survive in childhood. Right? Mm-hmm. It's just that at some point in our lives they become obstacles rather than support. And so they're kind of a protection. They're kind of a defense. The passion kind of maintains in place the idealization of ourself. We all have an egoic ideal, and also what we're avoiding. Mm-hmm. So, but when we wake up to it, then it's like for me, I can realize the pain, but I can also then aware that this is causing me
this causing, actually the suffering is happening for me in the heart, though I may not realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming back to feel, to be with whatever's happening here with me, the worry and anxiety, and at the same time, allow myself to tune into my heart and feel the vulnerability. As I allow myself to kind of sit with my vulnerability, or be with it, and let go of all this kind of activity that is my worry that somehow is oriented towards trying to keep me safe, though it's not really working, then I can sort of come into this sense of being undefended. And that sense of undefended, for me, is then, it's like, oh, as I'm just allowing myself to be here in the immediacy of the felt experience in the moment, there's actually a sense of, oh, this is a sense of courage that's arising. So it's kind of it's sort of a, Russ Hudson describes it as an alchemical process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as we're working with ourselves and being with, and this is like, we're seeking the truth. And in that truth, kind of the alchemy of it, and out of that, and as we in part then, we're also then relaxing into ourselves and becoming more, an important part of the Enneagram work is also then to connect, to be connected to the centers. If I'm connected to the sensation of my body, that provides a foundation to feel my heart and quiet my mind and kind of open into this other space. And that's so it's helpful to know, say, knowing the information, knowing what the virtue may be for your type,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't actually, it doesn't happen by trying to be that quality, but it's more about, oh, that quality is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And as I actually then sense into myself and do the work, the virtue can arise. Of course, it doesn't happen just one time. It happens again and again and again.
Right.
But as we work with ourselves and become more attuned to this process, our passion can lighten up, and we can be more frequently in contact with our virtue.
Thank you.
So I would say that, so we looked at the next page. So this gives a little example of the virtue of awakened heart. On the final 2 pages, the last 2 pages, there's actually a definition or a specific spelling out of the virtue, which I will not go into here, but I do want to go through this piece on the awakened heart. This is kind of another, they're similar, there are different ways of in place of the traditional virtue. This is from Roxanne Howell Murphy. She's putting in this piece on the awakened heart. And so so let's look at, start again with type 8. A loving connection and willingness to let others into your heart does not diminish your strength. It's a vital dimension of your strength. What is missing is the compulsion to use more energy than is needed for the situation. And in that energy with 8s, it's often kind of an anger. So an anger that's protecting the vulnerability. Because paradoxically, although this is a very strong type, they have the most vulnerable inner child. So there's this kind of paradox to it. And that's, she notes that. It's counterintuitive to our egoic point of view. And so we keep, from our egoic point of view, we kind of keep pursuing the same old thing. But when we relax that, we find that, that this, if I really soften myself, I can still feel, I can be there and be strong at the same time, the other kind of strength. So here she calls it the virtue as heartful strength. And 9, the virtue then be showing up and being present here. Another word is engaged. So 9s tend to be avoidance, staying with situations and becoming engaged, even when uncomfortable, does not diminish your capacity for inner peacefulness. It expands it. What is missing is the compulsion to remove and erase yourself from experiences that are beyond your comfort zone. And then for type 1, the virtue here she names as joyful serenity. You're not responsible. So ones have a sense of being, needing to be very responsible, reforming. So here it's recognizing that you're not responsible for fixing the world. There's a greater intelligence at work than you can see through your own eyes. Practicing acceptance does not diminish your capacity for contributing to the higher good. What's missing is the compulsion to be responsible for it all. So is that a good example for the serenity prayers? Ways to see what I can change and what I can't. Going on to type 2, here the virtue is called creativity through humility. Being generous to yourself, including yourself in your own life, does not diminish your capacity to be generous with others. You will always have a caring nature. What's missing is the compulsion to overdo your attention on others. It's a big deal to realize, to actually come back, to address your own needs. And for 3, it's authentic, truthful heart. Having contact with your heart doesn't diminish your capacity for being excellent in what you do. You can be both productive and open-hearted. What's missing is the compulsion to constantly be pushing yourself. And for 4, it's emotional balance and equanimity. Engaging in so-called ordinary experiences doesn't diminish your unique individual expression. You have everything you need to flourish with depth and a rich life. What is missing is the compulsion to let magnified emotions define your identity. And for 5, the virtue non-attachment. Keeping an emotional distance or relying on your mental expertise reinforces the feeling of being all alone in the world. Having contact with your body and your heart does not diminish your intelligence, but expands it. What is missing is the compulsion to rely on your thinking. Courage for 6s. The real ground of safety and knowing resides within. Learning to listen to the quiet inner guidance does not diminish your capacity to act, but provides a more solid, stable ground. What is missing is the compulsion.
I'm trying to interrupt you. Just want to go back to 5. I'm trying to read your handwriting. It says, is it incompetent heart?
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means in regards to a 5? Why the word incompetent applies?
Well, 5s are a competency type. So it's that kind of fear of exposure. But these just happen to be on here as a side piece, so I didn't mean for these to be part of the presentation.
Oh, okay.
I was because I had this handout, but yeah. So yeah. So it's that the fear of exposure, I guess, that I have enough energy to be able to cope with the world. Because the 5s is that there's this sense of, I can't, it's overwhelming, so I got to pull back and, kind of go hide myself in a way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for 6, the opposite, what is missing is the compulsion to have to be busy, to kind of deal with this high sense of anxiety. And finally, reselling its wonderment through sobriety and presence. Having authentic contact with your heart does not diminish your capacity for being joyful. In fact, it heightens it. What is missing is the compulsion of moving constantly from one thing to the next.
Question?
Yeah.
You said type 5 is a competency point? Type competency?
It's actually a competency point. I mean, there's many different triads in the Enneagram. One of them is called the harmonic triad. And it's a way of dealing with frustration and difficulty. And actually, and in that, there are competency types, reactive types, and positive types. And fives actually are a competency type, 1, 3, and 5.
1, 3, and 5.
Like,
I was wondering if maybe at some point along the way if it would fit in to talk about how in your experience some of this overlaps with or reinforces Buddhist teachings and how in some ways it might be in tension with them. So for example, let's see, on type 1, serenity, so on the paradox it says, on the last part, what is missing is the compulsion to be responsible for it all. So that seems like that fits with equanimity and the law of dependent origination, that things arise for many reasons and we can't control all the reasons. There's equanimity. On the other hand, from the Buddhist point of view, I think there isn't, there's a greater intelligence at work, so to the extent that the greater intelligence is some overarching intelligence or being or state, there's nothing that's there other than that there are multiple causes and conditions. So it seems that that's an example of where, from my understanding of my experience with teachings, it partly overlaps but partly is in tension, depending on how you interpret the intelligence part. So I was sort of curious in your own experience as you've studied these
well, I think
things.
there's similarities, but the truth is, I haven't studied Buddhism that much. You know, I find that there's many similarities, so I find it supportive to come and to meditate. But I can't really. I don't have any expertise in Buddhism.
Oh yeah. No, I said from your own experience. It could also be like with the diamond card approach as well.
But the key thing here that you mentioned that's important from the diamond experience and from the Enneagram, I guess, within the diamond heart uses the Enneagram. So there's a logos, and the logos is that there is this. There's kind of this mystery. It's being with a capital B, the mystery of being, that infuses all of reality. That is the mysterious force, and that everything is functioning according to laws, and that are constantly unfolding. This is all, and so everything is part of that intelligence that just is evolving moment to moment to moment.
For me, personally, the Enneagram, it's wonderful because it shows our different slants on attention. And to my understanding, Buddhism is all about attention to attention. And to know, like, my particular leanings help me actually become a more developed version of myself, as it were. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the Enneagrams really help. I mean, of course, the Enneagram has much more detailed descriptions of the personalities and the patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. But it's very helpful to realize that that's kind of a wiring that we have that helps is then being able to see that I have natural talents and abilities, and also then on the downside, the passion that is difficult. But for me, it's like one of the great things that initially when I got involved with was realizing that all of this fear and anxiety that I experienced was part of my neurobiology, so to speak. It wasn't my kind of particular personal deficiency, and particularly as a man, I was like, you're not supposed to, all of that conditioning that I had, you're not supposed to be fearful. So it's very helpful in allowing us, supporting, being compassionate with ourselves, as well as then with others, and realizing that, if they aren't just, a lot of times in conflict, if you would just change and see it from my perspective, to realize how deeply, that we are all functioning out of this, our own kind of reality, though, as we work on ourselves and begin to open up and we can be aware of the qualities of other types.
So it's kind of an antidote to a cycle of shaming, feeling bad. Why am I this way? Why is this person that way?
Yeah.
Is that in that sense it sort of overlaps at a general level with other typologies, which would say, oh, this is the way this person is, and they may be doing the best they can, or whether they're doing the best they can or not in a given moment. It may be easier for them to do a certain way and harder for them to be another way. And whether that explanation is based on the Enneagram or attachment style or Buddhist personality types, they're different sources of understanding people's needs and strengths.
Yeah. And with modern psychology, as part of the Enneagram, for example, they're in more detail. Certain types are attachment types too. But that's part of the personality as well as they talk about attachment, object relations, attachment, rejection types, and frustration types. So, as we're engaged with personal work, that information can be very helpful. So,
for people who don't know their type, is there a test? I did a test and figured out what I was. So, do you have a recommendation for people to?
Well, there's one little book called The Essential Enneagram by David Daniels that I think is I like that.
I think you can do it online also.
Yeah, you can do various tests online, but it's really helpful then to work with somebody or converse with somebody or have a system with somebody who really knows the system. Because when you're just reading the words, there's a lot of look-alike issues among types. So getting the feeling for what the different types are is important as part of really understanding where you are with that. Yeah. For some people, it's very a lot of number of individuals, quite a few. It's very easy to know your type right off. Others it takes a little more work, and there's a small percent that it's really difficult to really hone down exactly what your type is.
I just want to echo that. Because, I'm very much involved with Enneagram work too, and it's easy to I mistyped myself. I thought I was one type, and things never did seem quite to fit, but in a way I still thought I was that type. And then I talked with people who are very knowledgeable about Enneagrams and work with them, and I identify now with a totally different type that feels a lot more real. And I can really see me acting out me to this type. And as I think you mentioned, we all carry all the types of the Enneagram, just one predominates others. And so that's a good piece of advice that's, really serious with the Enneagram. It helps to have somebody who's really knowledgeable about it, kind of discuss it with you, and it can help you get a clearer idea.
Right. Yeah. It's very. So how, in your case, it does happen a lot of times that people think they're one type for a good amount of time, and they discover. There's a woman in a small group I'm in that's just happened to her, So she'd gone through years of thinking she was another type, and one of the things is one of the indications of type a lot of times is, if you're new to it, is the type that is most repulsive to you is your own type.
That's where you just go.
I know that was a me. I don't want to be a 6. Who wants to be a 4 type? Yeah.
We're just about out of time. So did somebody have a question? Yeah.
I was curious if you could explain a little bit more how this woman, sort of how she understood herself at first and what the change was. Obviously, you can't give confidential information, but you can talk about it in general.
Well, apparently she went through several different types. She thought she was a 4 for sometimes, probably on this, and she thought she was a 5, but I think she is, and then she came to realize she was a 6. But I mean, she's a 6 with a strong 5 wing, so that's another thing, is that we're impacted by the points on each side of it. But she said it was like, what she made it was like, you know, living your life thinking you're one ethnicity and then discovering that you're another or something, if you have a strong identification around that. But she also mentioned that that's related to the point that I made, is that when she was going through Enneagram training and they talked about the 6, that you know, it was sort of like blah, 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 like she wasn't really open to hearing the details of the type. So sometimes there can be that resistance to actually seeing what we are.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Is there sort of a typical path per type through the circuit? I mean, you suggested that we all manage to partake of the different types at one time or another. Is there would a 6 move through the types in a specific way?
Well, we're connected to two. That's kind of another conversation or another teaching, but we're connected. As you can see on the second page, the third page actually, the line, for example, as a 6, I'm connected to point 9 and to point 3.
Okay.
And 9 is my heart point, and 3 is my kind of stress point. So when I'm more relaxed, and there's a high side and a low side to both of those points. But like as a 6, I can procrastinate or get paralyzed by my doubt. So under stress, it puts me into 3, or actually take action. You know? Also, being a head type, I'm kind of up and out. Going to 9, a body-based type, really helps me get grounded in here. So by knowing your stress point and your heart point, it's also helpful then in your development.
Thank you.
Just what time you said.
Yeah. You done?
Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you. We miraculously have a host today.
Yes, I'm serving as your host today. I got late notice, so this is not like typically well curated. I was joking, it's exactly what I normally do. Fruit and sweets, basically. There's hot water for, I don't know if the hot water got.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, great. So if you have tea, just put your cup in the sink and I shall wash it. There's a sign-up sheet over there, and if you give us your name and contact information, you will receive many blessings from us. And if you want to, you need to go to the GPF, gaybuddhist.org site, and there's a link to go into Yahoo to join the Yahoo group where you get other helpful information. I will be going around with Donna Bowl, or more likely I will just be standing so you can pass me. Our Donna pays for all of our expenses, and it is a gift to the community to show what you can. $10 is our suggested amount, but what is comfortable is fine. Around 12:30 people who want to go to lunch together. Assemble at the door. And I don't know, I think that's it.
I actually want to make another point. So I was hoping to get to this, but ran out of time. But an important part of doing work with yourself, with ourselves, is actually working with the three centers of intelligence. So it's, to my impression, Buddhism doesn't give much attention to the body or the belly center. And this is really important. Is this actually the immediate belly, but it's all sensations in the body. So if we meditate, meditating where there's a sense of connecting with the breath in the belly, and just sense down to sense your feet, and just open to all the sensation in your body. It's very, sensation touches our consciousness, and then it's a support to actually connect with our hearts. And when we connect with our heart, that kind of quiets our mind, so that we're able to access the intelligence of the three centers. So there's like the immediacy of the belly of the sensation. It's always here in the present moment, and then that supports the knowingness of the heart and the intelligence of the heart, as well as a quiet mind. So we quiet the busy mind, which is what's always functioning from our egoic self, to the quiet mind is just that knowing, that the clarity and peacefulness that is the knowing without having to think. So it's sort of this what happens then is this dynamic of being and knowing as a oneness.
Thank you. Just to hold Paul Shepherd in your hearts, he's had just a series of health crises of late. Also, I don't know if Peter would agree, but we were at the same performance on Friday night of the good book at Berkeley Rep. I think it closes tonight. What did you think? I thought it was great. I thought it was fascinating.
Well, something raised a lot of questions.
So, quite moved. I think it ends tonight. But it's about an atheist biblical scholar and her journey, and many of the cast members play different parts of figures in the Bible. So it's got a lot of humor, a lot of heart, and the other main storyline is a young gay perfectionist who wants to do everything right,
one on any.
Huh?
A one on
yeah, right. But it's actually self-ejects from the Catholic Church because of the prohibitions against homosexuality, and their two trajectories meet very movingly. Anyway, I recommend it one day. Notice, yeah.
Any other message?
Well, I left out these dandelion chocolates that are in a bag. They're like chocolate toffees, but I didn't make them, and I've never had them before. I've had other stuff, so if it's good, you can thank me. If it's bad, it's not my fault. In terms of starting this class that I'm teaching on mindful self-compassion, so it's there's some students from my law school classes and from law school, but it's as to people in GBF, it's just by donation. So I'll send out an email so you can ask me questions and register, but it's not meant to be anything where money is like an obstacle to it. It's just a gift to people from my point of view.
Any other announcements? Yes. And next week is an open discussion. So let's gather for the dedication now. We can give you handouts.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings
find happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.